What's up everyone, welcome to today's video, welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today I wanted to go ahead and highlight a few things in favor of one of the mechanics that we've seen in Gotham Knights and something along the lines of the way the conversation is going. And the reason I wanted to do this is because the way these conversations go sometimes, there are people who are for a project whenever we see a gameplay reveal, and then there's some people that are fully against, and then there are people that are in the middle. One thing I try my best to do is to look at as many sides as I possibly can, because having followed this game since some of the whispers of its release or reveal, I can say that it's been quite interesting, because since then we've seen a lot of games in the industry come out in poor states, and we've also seen some other games in the industry come out exceptionally well. If you think very closely, Cyberpunk 2077 was one of those games where it seemed like the game could do no wrong, or the developers could do no wrong, and eventually they bungled their release, at least to a certain extent. We, as the community of Gotham Knights fans, people looking forward to this game, or even some Arkham fans, we don't want that to happen. We want the very best for the Gotham Knights project, and I think that's something that many of us can agree that we're actually looking forward to. So first of all, we have to go ahead and see what the pulse of the community is in some aspect. This is not representative of everyone that's playing the game, but at least if you go on Reddit or go to other forums, you're going to see people with posts like these or posts that are against these. One of those sentiments is, "It's not an Arkham game," is not a valid argument. This is the title of the post written by Redditor Octavius Bangwolf, and they pretty much go ahead to say that something about this particular game, Gotham Knights, in their minds did not bode well. And they even go ahead to buttress a statement saying that because people are actually, in a sense, somewhat looking at Gotham Knights from the lens of Arkham, they're making the statement that it is actually an industry-wide standard that's been set by the Arkham tetralogy. So the four games have actually set something in motion that cannot easily be denied, that cannot easily be ignored when it comes to making modern video games. You see, if you go back to looking at, say, some old superhero iterations, you're going to see that many of those games really did come a long way. They were fun, they were enjoyable, but there was something missing. And I think technology probably had to catch up to help a lot of these developers realize the fullness of their vision. And the Arkham games were some of the games that came in and really did challenge, or at least push the envelope to a place where no one had really seen it before. In fact, if you think about it, the Arkham games even became some sort of the measure, a standard for people to judge games like the Spider-Man games on the PlayStation 4. If you kind of think about it, many people kind of drew a lot of similarities. Many people drew a lot of somewhat, I would say, similar mechanics, comparisons in the way both Spider-Man and Batman carried out some of their stealth gameplay, combat counter, and even some of the developers openly admitted that they took inspiration from the Arkham games. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, what it means is you're willing to climb on the shoulders of those who have gone ahead of you, and you're actually willing to use their expertise to become a springboard to succeed. And guess what? The Spider-Man games on the PlayStation 4 and even Miles Morales, they enjoyed all of that and they succeeded. Now, this did not mean that they copied Arkham 100%. In fact, it would be somewhat impossible to have done so, because Spider-Man is a different superhero than the Batman, right? But instead, they took the really strong concepts, they put their own identity of their own superhero, and were able to spin something that was actually pretty good. Which brings me to something that's pretty important in this Gotham Knights iteration. Now, from the gameplay footage that we saw, a lot of people saw Nightwing use a glider. In fact, this really did raise some eyebrows, because some people already were quick to jump in and compare it to Fortnite. Now, in defense of this mechanic, I'm going to go ahead and try to see why the developers would have ever in the world used some kind of a paraglider for Nightwing's traversal. There are probably other reasons, but let's go ahead and look at Nightwing issue number 144. So you guys know on this channel, whenever you tell me to go get comics, I sometimes listen, and today I listened. And I got myself an issue 144, digital copy anyways, of Nightwing, and in there, in like the very first few pages, he responds to a crime by using some kind of paraglider thing. In fact, he was actually commending it as something that helps him to do better in terms of traversal and helps him move faster. So if you notice, he calls this, he said, now let's see how this GPS wing sync up works out. And then when it arrives, Nightwing says, not bad, Lincoln Center in 2 minutes. Would have taken me at least 5 minutes swinging. And so he's pretty much approaching his destination. People are looking at it going, woo, wow, shiny. This is a really nice tool you got there, Nightwing. And I think the developers wanted to go ahead and, in a sense, utilize this aspect of the canon. Now, yesterday, I made my video talking about the mystical leap and how Jason was using this magical power and was wondering where in the canon this mystical leap appeared. Some of you were quick to respond and say, well, Jason seems to have some mystical powers, but there's no such thing as a mystical leap. And so it could be explained that he's using some mystical powers to do those jumps. But now with the paraglider and Nightwing, we're seeing that this is actually something that is in canon. Keep in mind, nonetheless, that even with this particular paraglider or wing device that Nightwing is using here, the community was a little bit not for it when it was first released. In fact, I looked through Reddit and I saw a Reddit post where somebody actually asked and said, hey guys, what do you think about this particular Nightwing glider? And some people in the comments said, hey, I dig it. Some people actually said, well, he's got his own wingsuit. What's the point in him using that? And still, there was contention at that time. And this was actually a 2012 issue where I think this was kind of thrown into the mix in terms of the storyline. So at the end of the day, I think the developers are fine actually using something like that. I don't think there's any problem in terms of them adopting a device that would help Nightwing get some traversal, especially if it gives it a little bit of variation. Also, he could also have a grappling ability, which is something that if you don't necessarily want to use the paraglider, you can go ahead and just probably ignore it. And I think this probably removes that misconception that this game is probably trying to copy Fortnite. I mean, on a surface level, many people will make this claim and run away, but not necessarily want to look deep into why in the world the developers would do something like that, or the narrative, or whoever the gameplay designers would have, made that decision to say Nightwing needs to use that particular paraglider. So I wanted to make this video to put that in context, just to say there are aspects that it seems like the narrative is wanting to stay as close to different aspects of canon, different aspects of the story, and so we can continue to look for these little hints and pick them up and talk about them. Over time, we'll probably revisit some other things like the gameplay reveal that was shown earlier on and why that was somewhat different from what we got to see on the 10th of May, 2022. But I'll leave that for another time. I appreciate you guys so much for watching the video. Thank you very much for your time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk very soon. Peace out.